Thank you, sir. You know, it is indeed an honor to be here. I too feel great knowing that there's a lot of gun owners out there, and they're law-abiding citizens, and for everyone that owns a gun, get some more. Quickly. You know, when I came in, first of all, I want to just thank the folks of MEDEFCO for inviting me, and God bless you all. You're a wonderful organization, and too bad there aren't many more organizations of this caliber across our great nation. I think if there were, things might be a little different, but we are in a fight to win, and ultimately we shall win the fight. That's guaranteed, and I'll kind of explain that why. You know, when I came in, I was looking at your books there, and I loved many of the titles, and there was one in particular that really grabbed my attention, because normally I don't use swear words, but folks, this book sums it up totally. I mean, really. Here we are, the greatest nation in the history of the world, now being pimped out by people that we should have left alone. You know, I feel like waking Nixon up and slapping him around a little bit for opening the door to that. But, you know, as you carry on the philosophy of freedom in our country, and we're still coming up against statism, and, you know, you try to focus on the awareness of our Constitution and Bill of Rights, as well as the proper role of government as a servant of the people, not our master. And see, that's something that has been lost. You have career politicians, not statesmen or stateswomen. They're career politicians who think they are better than you and I are. They're career politicians who now deal with us from a position of strength and fear tactics. And this is something that we cannot tolerate in this country. We are at our road's end now. We used to be at the fork of the road. Well, I'm sorry, we've taken the left road in the fork, and it is now time for us to back up and turn the ship right again. Now, when I talk about turning the ship right again, well, what do you mean, Ron? Well, the United States of America has now reached a certain point in history. How many people in this room are biblically literate at all? Okay. You all have heard of the children of Israel. And when the children of Israel founded their country, they had great kings like David and Solomon, and they had some bad kings too. And their last king was Gedaliah. And I believe he was their 44th king and their final king. Now, biblical history, you know, there's a saying that history repeats itself. Now, because the children of Israel did not heal themselves from their evil ways or turn to God and change their ways, what happens? That country ceased to be no more until it was refounded again in 1947 and officially established in 1948. And so here we are in America. Why did we get to this point where we too could be in the final days of the United States of America as a free republic? Well, I'll call it what it is. It's a semi-free republic with a mongrel economy at best. And as a nation, we witnessed the fastest and most mighty growth of economic power and military power and education in the world, in the history of the world. Our middle class was legendary. Our work ethic, it was Detroit. That was the arsenal of democracy. Should have been the arsenal of the republic, but you know, that's just a term. Well, America the Beautiful was not perfect, but even with her faults, my friends, she was always good, at least in my opinion. Her foundation was excellent. She was destined to not only be a land of opportunity for those of us blessed to be born here, but also a beacon of light and hope for those seeking a better life through legal immigration. In addition, the United States was to be the premier example of how a nation of free people can benefit from the blessings of a market-based economy that enabled individuals to start and grow businesses, find a job, or engage in a worthy career, like medical research, for example. But unfortunately, the United States is no longer carrying on as a constitutional republic. And we have to face the truth. We are not operating any longer as a constitutional republic. We have digressed into a democracy, a mob rule democracy that doesn't give a rip any longer about the individual. And in fact, we are a nation of increasingly fear-based individuals. Fear-based. And I'll get into more of that later on in my talk. Now, we were once a nation that prided itself in the knowledge of and the following of the 10 Commandments. I can remember where I grew up in Cleveland, walking into school every day and seeing the 10 Commandments, a metal plaque of the 10 Commandments on the wall every single day. I felt good knowing that I went to school hearing the same and reading the same things that my father talked to me about and I heard at church. And there was a reason why there was that connection, because but recently the so-called commander-in-chief rejected a Christian minister to deliver an inaugural prayer because 20 years ago that particular minister stated, according to the Word of God, that homosexuality is sin. Now you see how we've digressed as a country? Well, we once prided ourselves in knowing right from wrong. Were we always perfect? No. But because we were good, we were mightily blessed. Someone wrote a song that talked about how God shed His grace upon this country. And grace means that when you respect God and you are relying on His love and His blessings, you know that He's on your side. Not because you're so good, but because He is so great and you have faith in Him. He would continue to bless America just as He did King David in Israel. Was David a perfect man? But no. Yet he was called a man after God's own heart. And He still blessed David because David himself personally loved God and respected God, and therefore because of that, the people rejoiced and were prosperous under King David. And Solomon to a certain degree, until Solomon went crazy and raised taxes and did some other things. America is a nation whose governmental responsibilities have devolved from protecting America from our enemies, both foreign and domestic, and defending the unalienable rights of we the people, to ensuring special rights for homosexuals and calling it equality. Our beloved country was supposed to be the head, not the tail, and not a slave to the lender. But unfortunately today, the government has put our republic in mortal danger by borrowing from enemy nations like China. One of the terms of receiving this money from China is that America is not being allowed to seek new sources of oil on federal lands. If the federal government did not wastefully buy up 70% of the land mass of Utah, for example, and huge portions of many other states, perhaps the United States could be an energy independent nation today. Because on private lands, they are discovering new sources of oil and trying to benefit our nation with these sources. In fact, America would be a huge oil exporter. Now, during his inaugural address, President Obama called for social justice. Well, how about economic justice, Mr. President? By getting your progressive, overbearing government out of the way and allowing economic freedom, which would lead to economic growth, new business activity, increased jobs, more taxpayers, thus lessening the so-called need to increase anyone's taxes, no matter their economic status. And you know, when it comes to economic status, see, because of the decrease in the quality of our education, individuals in our nation today sit back and accept this class warfare? Why should I be jealous of a man who may be smarter, better positioned or whatever to become a billionaire or a multimillionaire because of his sweat equity, because of his work ethic? Why should I should be scooting over next to him and learning by example so that I can turn my son on, and so on and so on and so on. That's what we should be about. But no. Now, President Lincoln argued that either slavery is right or freedom is right, and that the country couldn't long stand if it was divided on which was so. My fellow patriots and believers in the sovereignty of God, how long can this nation stand if we remain divided over the issue of modern-day slavery, better known as growing government tyranny? How long, I ask you? Right now, the government is embarked upon not allowing the recent crisis that occurred in Newtown, Connecticut to go to waste. And I'm sure they're gearing up now that they've had another little incident in Texas. Now, the collection of elected statists and appointed czars are conspiring on ways to intimidate us through breaking down our God-given right of self-protection, as well as massive wealth confiscation and redistribution. The government officials are as aware as you and I that confiscating guns from law-abiding sovereign American citizens and overtaxing us will not make America safer nor improve the U.S. economy or shrink the deficit. For example, Detroit and Chicago. I love Chicagoland. Every time I used to go into Chicagoland, I marveled at all the wonderful stores on Michigan Avenue and the lakefront and Millennium Park and all the wonderful places to go. And through the years, people were pretty friendly in Chicago, and it was a great town. But in recent years, it's becoming more and more like Detroit. And Detroit is sort of the leader in the way of urban decay and destruction, not because the people were inherently bad, but because bad policy, bad teaching convinced people to take a rotten course in life. And they're destroying themselves. And this is what, and you know, there are people who have accused me of not telling the truth when I say this, but there are those in government and elsewhere, especially in higher academia, who are enjoying this destructive behavior, because all along, in order to take down this country into the statist area that they're doing, they have to have us divided. They have to make sure that people like me don't like people like you, and people like you don't like people like me, and all, you know, just lowbrow things that don't make any sense, really. And you take away morality. You take away a sense of the importance of the individual. And you take away the work ethic, the importance of family, and all the things that make life worth living. And so that's why, and you take away all those good elements, what happens? You're going to see your fellow man as nothing more than target practice victims. Somebody to shoot when you get pissed off because you weren't taught to act like a human being. This, my friends, is by design. And I'm sure most of you all know this. And this is what I think we need to press on as far as telling our fellow citizens about, that they don't have to live this way. I can't for the life of me understand why most blacks and most Jewish people still vote the way they do. When you consider the fact that the Democrats long ago forcibly enslaved people, and when they couldn't do that anymore, they were very smart, they were very crafty. They said, well, we can't cripple them in America one way, we'll cripple them another way, through the mind. And we'll sit back and watch them cripple each other, and this will spread like cancer throughout the United States of America. And it will become totally stupefied. And we will end up in the position that we are in today. On the cliff, ready to fall over, wondering what in the heck happened. And sometimes I've been guilty of saying horrible things about the city of Detroit. Not because I inherently dislike the place. No, because I grew up knowing the history of this great city. I grew up in Cleveland, and Cleveland too, to a certain degree, was a huge manufacturing center. In fact, there's a trilogy: Detroit, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. We were the manufacturing center of the earth. Okay, there was no place on earth that could touch those three cities. The number one steel center in the world, the number one automotive center in the world, and Cleveland was number two in both industries, and its massive industry was actually larger than each Pittsburgh and Detroit. Huge. Millions of jobs between those three cities and those three industries alone. But we've allowed, through stupefactation and NAFTA, GATT, and the whole 9 yards, to have, and high taxes, my God, to literally chase these opportunities, these wonderful jobs outside of this country, probably never to return in our lifetimes. Probably. I never totally give up hope, but I'm just looking at where we are now and what's happening and what's being allowed to happen. Now, God's own words remind us that to totally trust in the governments of man without the guidance and grace of our Creator is utter foolishness at best. When a nation no longer instructs its young to be virtuous and wise, immorality and foolishness will replace them and undermine our society. And I ask you, my friends, what do we have today? The great Samuel Adams, the American patriot, accused by King George III of being the chief rabble-rouser of the American independence movement, he wrote in a letter to James Warren in 1779, and it goes, "A general dissolution of principles and manners will more surely overthrow the liberties of America than the whole force of the common enemy. While the people are virtuous, they cannot be subdued. But once they lose their virtue, they will be ready to surrender their liberties to the first external or internal invader. How necessary then is it for those who are determined to transmit the blessings of liberty as a fair inheritance to posterity, to associate on public principles in support of public virtues? Throughout the ages, men of principle have warned us about the consequences of turning away from God, His principles, and His grace." While much has been written in recent years to try to dismiss the fact that America was founded upon biblical principles of Judeo-Christianity, all the revisionism in the world cannot and will not change the facts. Anyone who examines the original writings, personal correspondence, biographies, and public statements of the individuals who were instrumental in the founding of America will find an overabundance of quotations showing the profound extent to which their thinking and lives were influenced by a Christian worldview. That is not to say that all of the founding fathers were Christians. No, they weren't. But the point is, even those few that were not Christians were deeply influenced by the principles of Christianity, a mindset that helped to shape their political ideals. It is possible to be distracted with whether Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson ever put their personal faith in Jesus Christ, that one misses the fact that the founders almost all throughout from biblical perspective, whether they believed it or not, meaning they respected. Benjamin Franklin profoundly respected Christianity and its virtues. He wrote to that fact. And the reason why there was a respect, my friends, is because Christians of that day had what Mark Scott used to say on the air, cojones. They did not back down. And Christians, I think we're living in the first age where Christians were chickens, at least in this country. Last week, I was with Pastor Yule, and he showed me a picture of hundreds, literally hundreds of Christians in Africa were stacked like sardines, okay, charcoaled bodies. And he and I mean, he already had the picture, but he just whipped it out, and he looked at it as if that was the first time he looked at it. And we're just I guess must have been about 15 or 20 seconds just, oh my God, where is the outcry? Where's Jesse? Hey, where's the camera? Jackson, now. Where are these people? Where is anyone? I don't hear even Christian groups hollering about this. In fact, I'll tell you this. The number of Christians that are being murdered around the world in this day and age now rivals that of the Jews being killed under Hitler. But no one gives a rip because Christians have not really been giving a rip, as far as I'm concerned, as far as overtly caring and showing their animus about this situation. And my friends, until we learn to respect ourselves and learn to stand up for our own faith, who else is going to, if you don't respect yourself, who's going to respect you? A primary example is David when he was a little boy. And he slew a lion and a bear. And he was about 18 or 19 or whatever. And he had to take out Goliath because all the adults were chicken, you know what. He says, what? You uncircumcised Philistine, you offend my God. You know what? I'm going to take your head off and feed your body to the fowls of the air. And he did. He knew God was with him. He walked in God's grace. You and God are, as an individual, are a majority, my friends. And for every great movement in history, by the way, God has always used a remnant. He never used the majority. You think it was the majority of the people that won freedom for America? No. The majority of them wanted to just, don't piss King George off. Let's just, everything's okay. The British aren't so bad. And no, they weren't the worst. But we wanted something different. Our founding fathers, we are dishonoring the memories of the founding fathers of this country with what we even put up in this nation. The last election was proof of that. My God in heaven, George Washington and the boys must be just livid because their spirits are alive in heaven. Okay? But I tell you, my friends, we are in a heap of hurt as a nation. Now, and you know, there's a number of reasons that we are not doing so well in that regard. Number one, at the time, Christians, freedom fighters, etc., stood their ground. As I said earlier, they didn't waver. And they were willing to die for their faith. They were willing to die for freedom. Were they perfect in their execution in the fight for freedom? No. It took us almost another 100 years for everyone to be free. But that's okay because, you know, we're all sinners saved by grace if we come to Christ. And we as Americans, black, white, or whatever, have to get over these old hiccups. Slavery was a worldwide economy booster at the time. And I'll tell you, I believe Dale, if he's here, will agree with me. We forgive you. We forgive the ancestors for all that garbage. Get over it, and let's move ahead. Okay. Are we done now? Now, despite any mistakes or sin America committed during her infancy, formative years, and beyond, her ascension to greatness was ensured because of the prevailing acknowledgement of the one who shed his grace upon her, thus laying the groundwork for the land of opportunity, first envisioned by the founding fathers. The internal enemies of freedom knew this. That is why they set out to destroy America from within through the government school system, the media, the entertainment industry, and so on and so on. These enemies of freedom understood that to collapse our republic, simply they had to separate the hearts and the minds of the American people from morality and self-control. In order for this to remain a free nation, we have to freely choose to be moral people, eliminating the excuse that we need to be controlled and told what to do by an overbearing evil government. Have to eliminate excuses. And by eliminating these excuses, that gives you more animus and energy to fight what is wrong and evil. My dad used to always tell me, before you go out to fight an enemy, make sure you look at yourself in the mirror and that you know that you're standing on the side of right and that you will be more assured of victory. And that is what we the people have to do in this country. Make sure that we're standing on God's righteous principles. Because you know why? When we do that and we walk in grace, He will stand with us. And history can back me up. You don't have to believe me, but history will tell you, if you study it, that when you do those things, you as an individual shall win. And I'll go so far as to interject this, that my personal opinion, I have to throw out the window, out the door, out in the garbage can when it comes to what I would desire for this country. My wife will tell you, at one time I said, well, if I could snap my fingers, all this garbage would have come to an end and we would be restored to a constitutionally limited republic. But I was wisely reminded, but would that be voluntary? Would everyone agree with that? It's an individual thing. We all have to want that. Because that's how God operates. God is a gentleman. America has told him in recent years, we don't want you. We don't want you in our schools. We don't want you anywhere. It basically almost kicked him out of the church. How many churches teach the 10 Commandments? Not many. None. Because they don't want to offend somebody. Well, what we should do is tell the world we're offended. And remind the world that it is because of Christianity and our belief in the one who shed His grace upon this land and us doing the right things regarding our nation that we did become the #1 nation in the world. And again, I'll reiterate, were we perfect? No. But our goal was to be good. There's no way we can be perfect. I used to think I was perfect, but when I got married, I got reminded, excuse me? But because of that, I'm a better man. Thank you, darling. Without morals, our republic cannot subsist any length of time. Therefore, when we see people decrying the Christian religion, we shouldn't. I've had to learn the hard way not to take it personally, because I wanted to turn into King David and run out with a sword and do this and do that. But we can't do that today. We're not in those days. But what I can do is turn to our Father as George Washington did. You think after 8 times of getting his rear end kicked in 8 battles, that George Washington, you don't think it's true that he knelt down to pray and caused his men to pray and ask for not only victory but forgiveness and to stand in His grace? And what happened? From a supernatural fog moving into all kinds of things when he was shot at directly. And the bullet holes were there, but there were no bullet holes in his body. Now people like to dismiss these stories and say, blah, 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 because they don't want to focus on the one who would love to focus on them and bless this nation and bless their lives. But you know what? That's a personal problem. As for me and my house, we shall love the Lord. Now, the best foundation and protection for our nation? Many say that it's a strong military. Others will say it's a fantastic economy. Others will say national unity. All those things are good, and they are partially true. But it is more important, my friends, to be a strong moral people, because out of the strength of morality comes more wisdom. Do you think that if America were in the state that she's in now, that we would have attracted the great minds of people like Wernher von Braun, who was a blessing to NASA and gave us and granted us through his intelligence and the development of the technology that took us to the moon? I mean, and the other avenues of science and medicine. We were the leaders in the world of everything. When I was a little boy, our educational system was second to none on the planet Earth. By the time I graduated from high school, well, things had fallen off a bit. But even then, never would I believe that they would have fallen to the point that they are now. This is abysmal. Every day that we wake up in the morning and we are still the United States and we haven't been totally taken over yet, it's a miracle, in my opinion, when you consider what's going on against this nation. Even Franklin Delano Roosevelt understood that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. The Lord God tells us in 2 Timothy 1, verse 7, "For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind." Well, unfortunately today, fewer and fewer Americans are living with the sense of power and of a sound mind. If you don't believe me, why is it that every time there's a disaster, like today that happened in Texas, they play into it, and then here come the vultures swooping in, the gun vultures. We've got to take the guns. We've got to take the guns. And this, that, and the other. They want to create a nation of fear and distrust amongst we the people, rather than saying, you know what? If you decide to take a life unjustly, you shall forfeit your spirit. We'll send your spirit back to the Father. That's what we're supposed to do. But because we don't do these things, our nation is cursed. And because we've so long not followed the proper tenets of dealing even with that one crime, we have become a nation of indecision concerning that. And here we have all kinds of activities that are just happening in our nation just willy-nilly now. Much to the joy of those who want to take us down, who would love to take away your rights as parents. How do you like that one? As parents. They don't want you teaching your son and daughters about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They have people thinking, oh, he's a constitutional wacko. All that is good, they call wrong now. That's also stated in the Bible. All that is wrong, they call it as good. It is more important. We have devalued ourselves into such a nation that we elect individuals who find it more important to grant special rights to homosexuals than to defend and uphold our unalienable rights for all Americans. And that, my friends, is so telling on how far we the people, we can sit here and blame Obama, we can blame Bonehead Boehner, we can blame all of these statists, okay? But first of all, we have to take stock of ourselves. My minister and my wife used to whip up on me because I was always, look at these, just whatever. Well, Ron, how good are you? What do you mean, how good am I? What sayest thou? And so I had to take stock of my own self before I could get angry at them. And I can promise you, my friends, the better you are, according to his principles, the more he's going to protect you. Even if, I'll go so far as to tell you, and I'm only saying if America falls, if you are in his grace, you won't fall. And if you don't believe me, that history is in the Bible. It's there, my friends. It is there. It is there. It is there. And so, as I said, Franklin D. Roosevelt understood that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. But unfortunately, as I said, fewer and fewer Americans are living with a sense of power and of a sound mind. Just today, I was looking at a story concerning Phil Mickelson, one of my favorite golfers. And, he comes across as a nice guy, and I always sensed that he had a kind of a Republican streak or whatever, or a conservative streak, let me put it that way. And when he spoke out about his high taxes, and he might have to move, and this, that, and the other, and he might have to retire because he has a tax rate of 63%. I mean, that's what Great Britain had in the 1960s when the Beatles made the song, The Tax Man. All right? Now, guess what happened? In this nation, the land of the free, Phil Mickelson was brutally attacked by liberals. Brutally attacked. So much so that this normally outspoken individual cowered down and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have spoken out loud about that. You know, taxes are a private thing, and well, I'll just have to deal with it. I'm sorry. My real name is Mr. Rogers." And then he saunters away. Ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what emboldens those who are against us. Now, had he turned around and said, "Get out of my face, you Philistines," and stood up and went back to the media and again and said, "This is what we're standing up for in this country? How dare you? This is ridiculous." And the truth about overtaxation without God, Americans will increasingly fear more and more and allow the opposite of God and all that is of God to rule over us and ruin our nation. Now, my friends, Thomas Jefferson said that there should be a revolution every 20 years. Now, revolution doesn't mean necessarily bullets. No. We had a revolution in this country to turn it into a mob rule democracy without any bullets. Talking about the mind. We have to take the time to support charter schools like my friend Mark is putting together, and so that the young can be reached with the truth and with a higher level of education. That's how the liberals did it in the earlier part of the 20th century when they decided they wanted to decapitate America from greatness. They said, "Well, we can't do it now. Those people are hardworking. They love their families, and oh my God, they love their God." And they sarcastically called Ohio, from Ohio to Nebraska, the Bible Belt, because there was such an ironclad belief system throughout those great states. And so, but because of all those believers, America overall was blessed. And the founding fathers, I'll put it to you this way, and I'm going to be wrapping up. If God was good enough for George Washington, Samuel Adams, and the 55 other founding fathers, he's good enough for me. If he was good enough for Ronald Reagan, the best president during my lifetime, he's good enough for me. If he was good enough for my own father, God rest his soul, he was good enough for me. And so I bid you, my friends, to become, and Jesus did say that he would want to call us his friends. I bid for you, my friends, to become friends with God. And trust me, God does not turn his back on his friends, no matter what happens to this country. I am compelled to tell Americans this because of the times we are in. And I speak this out of love, not only for America, but for you, because America is you. We are a nation of great people. God put so much into this great country, the largest source of fresh water on the earth, and how dare we allow ourselves to have a government that is now selling off Lake Michigan water to our enemy? How dare we sell hardwood that we should be using to build our own homes to China at wholesale to help pay for our debt? How dare we allow parking meters of cities to be bought by China? Highways. And they take the money for the toll roads. That's being pimped. We're like a whore. It's scandalous. But there's always hope. And I thank you for your time. God bless you. God bless America, and may America bless God. Thank you so much. Sir?
I'll ask if nobody's got one.
I was kind of actually surprised that, with your speech, how we talk about the downfall of America, how we've fallen on the grace of God. One of the things that, and this is kind of sort of a pointing a day for it, but, knowing that this nation has allowed 55 million unborn children since this day in 1973 to be murdered. How do we go and expect the grace of God for that kind of stain on us?
Well, and it's, ironically, I had that in my notes. I apologize for even missing that point. I thank you for bringing it up. You must have looked at my notes here. No, but we ask for forgiveness. That's all we can do. All we can do is ask for forgiveness and ask for mercy. Because, first of all, we can thank God that none of us in this room were behind passing that law. And even if anyone in this room ever in the past had an abortion or participated in that industry, you are not condemned by God, because God understands that you were operating under the law of the land. God has the bigger problem with the government and those that put that law in the land. And most people are dealing in ignorance. We are not properly taught. And God is a merciful and just God. And therefore, because not only from abortion, but everything else, personal sins, whatever, we seek forgiveness. That's what's beautiful about our God. Unlike what they teach with the false gods of Allah and whatever else. We are forgiven. Because if it wasn't for that, I think we would have already been toast a while back, because 55 million plus deaths of innocent individuals is appalling. And let's not forget, it's probably, I don't know how many million when you include every other nation. Because many other nations even now have a much higher percentage of ongoing abortions than America does now. Yeah, so important point, sir. Any other questions? Sir?
The debt ceiling, what is your feeling about that? The Republicans cave?
My God. You know what? I think it's time to change the name of the Republican Party to the Cave Party. Because, first of all, yeah, we should not, no, there should not be any more caving concerning the debt ceiling. First of all, debt is a curse. It makes you slave to the lender. All right? We have to, either way, we're going to go through some hardships. Oh, we already are. But things are going to get pretty rough. I would rather the nation go through hardship through the healing process, meaning that we are working on our debt, rather than sitting back, oh, we can increase the debt a little bit more because we're kicking the can down the road, and then the ultimate involuntary crash, or it won't be a crash, it'll be a crush. Okay? So, if you've ever dealt with serious illness in your body, you heal yourself through natural means. Sometimes it hurts. But I tell you, it beats death. Okay? So, to your question, sir, no, they should hold the line. And in fact, I'll go you one further, because they love to play chess. They love to play poker. If I were the Republicans, I would just go to the American people. I'd go have a meeting, have a big press conference. Well, American people, or Howard Boehner said, well, American people. Oh, he has that smoker's voice. But anyway, I would say, you know what? You all elected Obama. You all want this debt. Okay, have at it, Mr. Obama. We will not allow this to fall on our heads. You think you're big and bad? You think that you're going to heal the world? Oh, no, that isn't your plan. But you think you have the American people to believe that you're healing the world through debt? Then you do that. Because either way, see, the Republicans have allowed themselves to be put between a rock and a hard place. Because for so long they've compromised and caved in. The media is automatically on the side of whom? The other side. So even when the Republicans do make a positive stand, and they have tried to enact budgets or present budgets, but they're ignored by Harry Reid and their gang, and so the Republicans are automatically blamed. and the American people go along with it. So they've gotten themselves between a rock and a hard place, and though I feel sorry for them, they have themselves to blame because they didn't stand up consistently throughout the years. They should have learned when Ronald Reagan said that was the biggest mistake I made in my life, when he believed and trusted the Democrats when he first lowered taxes, and they made I think it was a 3-to-1 agreement, whereas they would lower the deficit or decrease spending. Anyway, I forget how it goes, but they would decrease spending according to each new dollar raised in. And at that time, they had a record amount of money coming into the Treasury, but the Democrats purposely overspent the amount that the Republican policies were bringing in. And guess what? Reagan gets blamed for that deficit when he technically didn't do that. It was the Democrats who controlled Congress, and so on. And so because of that history, I think Republicans are afraid. But it's not our job to be afraid. If they don't like you, so what? They're going to attack you anyway. I'd rather go down with my boots on, personally, and God seeing me doing the right thing, than to go down as a coward. I mean, what's that? Any more questions? Going once? Oh, that's it? Only 2 questions. Yeah, but thank you very much. God bless you all.